Howdy, folks, and welcome to JJ's Library and Readings. Welcome to the channel. This is the first episode, first video. I usually will have an intro to my videos, but today is going to be a little longer because I want to tell a little bit about myself and what I want through the channel. So, my name is JJ. I am a Kentuckian, and I love books. I was thinking of doing audiobooks, but I love YouTube. I love the community from it, to be honest. Usually I watch, people on YouTube, usually video gamers, and maybe someday we'll have video games on here, but we're going to do reading mostly. Um, I feel like I always want somebody to read with, but don't have anybody. So hopefully, this will not only just be nice for myself, but nice for y'all as well. And hopefully something you will enjoy. I expect the videos to be around 30 minutes to an hour long. Today's probably going to be a little shorter because it's the first video. Um, Probably expecting to read about 10 pages out of chapter 1. But I'm very happy to have y'all here. So I suggest we jump right into it. Oh, before I do, actually, please comment if y'all want me to read something else. If y'all have a book in mind, I'll try and read books that I like for a while, but we're going to read this one. And this is Between Two Fires by Christopher Buchlman. I bet I butchered that. There's going to be a couple words that I'm going to butcher in here, but it's okay. You know, I think it makes it feel more real, like I'm an actual human being, which I am. We don't do AI on here. At least, I don't think we ever will, which is good. Creative freedom and all that. So, I say let's start with chapter 1 of the donkey. The soldiers found the donkey on Friday. It was lame and its ribs were easily to count. It was too weak to run from them or even to bray at them, but it didn't seem to have the disease. It was just old. I looked at them hopefully from beneath a willow tree, swishing its tail against the flies. The fat one, and nobody knew how he stayed fat, took his warhammer up, meaning to brain it, but Thomas stopped him. He pointed at the barn. It would be smarter to walk into the barn first, where they could shelter against the coming rain. Godefroy nodded his agreement. The 4 men had been on the road in their rags and rusty armor without a good meal for many weeks, living on spoiled food from houses, watercress, and cattail tops from ditches, worms, bugs, acorns, and even a rotten cat. They had all eaten so much grass they had green piss. The disease was ruthless here. It had killed so many farmers that there was no bread even in this fertile valley. There were not enough hands to swing scythes, nor enough women willing to gather for the threshing, nor any miller to grind, nor bakers to stoke the ovens. The sickness, which they had called the Great Death, passed mysteriously, but surely from one to the other as easily as men might clasp hands, or a child might call a friend's name, or 2 women might share a glance. Now none looked at their neighbors nor spoke to them. It had fallen so heavily upon the part of Normandy that the dead would not be buried. They were piled outside in their dirty long shirts, and they stank in. I don't even know if you can hear me flip the pages. But I have the book. I suggest y'all get a book to follow along as well. But as I was saying, the August sun and the flies swarmed around them. They lay in weed-choked fields of rye and oats where they had fled in delirium. They lay pitifully in the shadow of the town church where they had crawled hoping that the last jester would hasten their time in purgatory. Stuck like glued birds to the limestone, they had tried to cool their fevered heads. Some fouled in houses because they were the last and there was no one to put them out. Those with means had fled, but many times it dogged them into the hills and swamps and manors and killed them there. The soldiers made a fire in the barn just near a small creek and a still house. The wood was damp and smoked unpleasantly, besooting the unchimneyed barn, but soon they were carving meat from the donkey's haunches, running sticks through it, eating it almost raw because they couldn't wait for the fire to do its work, licking their bloody fingers, nodding at each other because their mouths were too full for them to say how good it was. The sun was setting orange beneath a break in putrid clouds that had just begun to spit rain when the girl poked her head into the barn door. "Hello," she said. All of the men stopped chewing except Thomas. She was a bad age to meet these men, just too old to be safe, and just too young to know why. Her flaxen hair, which might have been pretty if it were not greasy and wet, hung damply on her neck, and her feet were growing before the rest of her, looking too big for her stick-like legs. "Hello," she said again. "Hello yourself," Godfroy said, leaning his lanky body towards her like a cat sighting on a bird. "You're eating parsnip," she said matter-of-factly. "It's donkey. Would you like some?" This would have sounded friendly except that Godfroy patted the rotten beam he was sitting on. She should sit near him if she wanted food. No, she was tied up in the woods to hide her. But she must have gotten loose. Her name is Parsnip, she said. "Well," Thomas said, "that's lucky for us. We're not supposed to eat meat on Friday, but parsnip is perfectly permissible." The others laughed. "The mouth on you, Thomas," Godfroy said, lingering on the final S, which Thomas' half-Spanish mother had insisted on pronouncing. "To the whoring manner born." "Is it Friday?" the fat one said. Both Thomas and Jaquit, the one with the drooping eye, nodded. Only Thomas kept eating. The rest watched the girl. The girl stood there. "Come, sit near me," Godfroy said, patting the beam again. With his other hand he pushed back a wick of string black hair. He wore jewelry that didn't seem to be on such a dirty man. Her eye fixed on a cross of jasper on a gold necklace, something the seigneur's wife might wear. "I need help," she said. "Come sit here and tell me about it." Nobody wanted strangers close these days. She began to realize there was something dark in this man's mind. The word is rape. He'll rape me. She thought about turning and running to the tree, but an angel had shown her these men and pointed to the barn. She knew it was an angel because her pretty auburn hair didn't seem to get wet in the rain, and because she, looked like something between a man and a woman, but more beautiful than either. It just pointed and said, "Go and see." When Angel spoke to her, she had seen perhaps three. They spoke the same Norman French she spoke, and she found that odd. Shouldn't they sound like foreigners? Put her faith in the angel, she did, even though it was gone now. It was the angel whom she saw most often, and she liked to think it was hers. She didn't run. "I need help putting Papa in a grave." "Silly bitch, there aren't any graves anymore. We're in a grave already. All of us. Just stack his bones outside. Someone will get to him." "Who?" "How the devil should I know? This is your sad little village. Maybe some nuns or monks or something. Anyway, everyone else is just putting them outside." "Well, I can't lift him." "Well, I won't lift him. I didn't live this long to catch it by hauling around dead serfs." "He's not a serf." "I really don't give a shit." "Please forget it, girl," Thomas said. "Go back in the house now." This man was different. He didn't frighten her, even though he was the biggest of them, exotic with his longish dark hair, handsome despite a nose that had been broken more than once and a round pitted scar on his cheek. He had more armor than the others, some on his legs and shoulders, as well as a longer coat of mail. But over his chain mail hood, he wore a peasant's big straw hat with a horn spoon through the hole in it. He was clearly dangerous, but also just a little ridiculous. He had spoken gruffly, but in the way that a man barks at a child to make the child act swiftly when there's trouble. She liked him. "Wait a minute," Godfroy said, dismissing Thomas and now addressing the girl. "How much is it worth to you?" "Brygans. Brygans. Sure, that's how we say it. That was the word for what these men were. Men who were soldiers before the war with the English, but who now traveled the roads or hid in the woods and robbed people. Even though the plague had come, her papa had spoken with their neighbors about what to do if Bragans came. Now they were here, and no one could help her. Why had the angel left? Why had he pushed her towards these thieves? "We only have a little silver," she said, "and some books." "I don't want silver." "The books are very good." Most of them are the new ones from the university in Paris. Books are for wiping my ass with. I want gold. I don't have any. Of course you do. Godfrey got up, and now Thomas stopped eating. Godfrey went over to her and pointed two fingers at where her pubis would be beneath her dirty gown. Right there, he said. Haven't you? Haven't you just got a little gold there already? The fat one was the only one who laughed, but it was hollow. None of them liked this about their leader, his taste for very green fruit. She had the fine bones and small build of a child, but her gaze was more than a girl's. She was probably just an eve of her first bleeding. If she lived, she would be tall next summer. Christ crucified, Godfrey, let her alone, Thomas said. That's only for my husband. Ha! Godfrey barked, pleased at his touch of worldliness. And where is he? I don't know. He shouldn't leave you alone. I mean, I don't know who he is. I am not yet promised. Then I'll be your husband. I should go now. We'll all be your husbands. We're good husbands. She can't have it, the fat one warned, eating again now. I'd rather get it from her than her papa. Leave her alone, Thomas said, and this time it wasn't a request. He put his straw hat beside him. He tried to do it casually, but the fast one saw it, and also, trying to be circumspect, spat out the overlarge piece of donkey he had just taken and set the rest on his leather bag. Godfrey turned to face Thomas. The girl slipped out the door. What if I don't want to leave her alone? Godfrey said. She's just a scared little girl in a dead house. Either she's full of it and you'll breathe it in from her, or she's shielded by God's hand, which would be even worse for us. Save your husbanding for whores. The whores are all dead, said Jaquet. Surely not all of them, said Thomas, trying one last time. And if one whore from Francis still has a warm shade, Godfrey will smell it out. You're funny, Godfrey said. You've always been funny, Thomas. But I need to fuck something. Go get the girl. No. Thomas stood. Godfrey backed up a little in spite of his nominal leadership. Thomas had white coming into his beard and lines on his face. He was the oldest of the four, but the muscles in his arms on either side of his neck made him look like a bullock. His thighs were hard as roof beams, and he had ready bended knees. They had all fought in the war against the English, but he alone among them had been trained as a knight. Godfrey noted where his sword was, and Thomas noted that. Thomas breathed in like a bellows and blew out through clenched teeth. He did this twice. They had all seen him do this before, but never while facing them. A drop of sweat rolled down Godfrey's nose. I'll get her, Jacquot said, proud of himself for thinking of a compromise. He went out of the barn into the rain, pulling his coarse red hood up. He held the hood's long tail over his nose and mouth against the smell pouring out of the house as he pushed the door open with his foot. The sun almost came down now, but the house was still full of trapped heat. The smell was blinding. Wan light coming into the polished horn slats in the window shone on the rictus, sure, of a very bloated dead man who had stained his sheets atop a mess of straw that could no longer be called a bed. He had kicked hard at the end of it. His face was black, his shirt ripped, maggots crawling exuberantly on him, as well as the two goats and a pig that had wandered into a single room dwelling to die. The girl wasn't there. And if she had been, Jacob didn't want to find her badly enough to stay in that hot, godless room. He would have preferred to go back into the bar then, but his failure would only put Godfrey in a worse humor. So he went back into the house, thankful for the cooler air, and whistled for her. He stood very still and looked around carefully. His patience was soon rewarded. He noticed her white leg up in a tree. 10 minutes later, and would have been dark enough to hide her. She was up in the tree, whispering for an angel and asking it to come back. But then she wasn't sure anybody else would see them, or that they would do anything or really lift anything, or even that they were real. She had only started seeing them since the great death came on. She thought that the ones she was seeing were lesser ones, that the famous ones like Gabriel were preparing for Judgment Day, which must be soon. Gabriel would blow his horn, and all the dead in Christ would get out of their graves. She knew this, was supposed to be a good thing, but the idea of dead bodies moving again was the worst thing she could imagine. It frightened her so much she couldn't sleep sometimes. If the angels were real, why had she been abandoned now? And why weren't they helping anybody when they got sick? Why had they let her father die so horribly, and now the man with the drooping eye had seen her? Why did her angel not strike this man blind as they had done to the sinners of Sodom and Gomorrah? Come on down, little bird, Jack had said. We won't hurt you. Yes, you will, she said, gathering her leg up under her groan as well as she could. All right, we will, but not much and not for long. Maybe just a night in the morning, then we'll be on our way. Or better yet, we might take you with us. Would you like that? 4 strong husbands and passage out of town? No, thank you. He leapt up onto a strong low branch almost high enough to reach her foot, and she climbed higher. She was much lighter than he. He would lose this game. Don't be trouble, he said. Don't rape me, she said. It won't be rape if you agree. Yes, it will, because I'll only agree to avoid being hurt. So there we have it. You'll agree to avoid being hurt. Very well. Come down, or I'll hurt you. He dropped back down to the ground. You don't mean it, she said. I do. You're not a bad man. I don't believe you are. I'm afraid I am. But you don't have to be. Sorry, I already am. Now I see a bunch of lovely stones by the stream. What say I don't get them and throw them at you until you come down? The foliage wouldn't allow for much stone throwing, and he wasn't sure he could make himself throw a stone at her in any case. But he said it as if he meant it. He sensed he had to get her to the barn quickly. Please don't. Then come down. It's the other one. He's the bad one. Tell him you don't find me. He has a temper. So does my father. He's dead. No, he's not. Enough games. Come down, or I'll knock you down with stones. She was crying now. He thought that she would call his bluff, but soon she probed for a lower branch with her long, ungainly foot. He helped her down and felt her trembling. He felt sick about what he was doing, but hard in his heart. He decided to talk to her about it while he hoisted her up on his shoulder and walked back towards the barn. I know this seems awful, but it really isn't. If God wanted order and goodness to the world, he shouldn't have made things quite so hard on us. We're all dead men and women. He wants chaos and death, he gets them. And what say do we have in it? All we can do is try to have a little fun before the mower comes for us, eh? And he will come for us. If you relax, you might not have such a bad time. You're just saying these things to make yourself feel better, she said, breathing hard in fear for what was about to happen. You're a smart girl. Too smart. This world's not made for smart girls. And here we are. So saying, he used his free hand to open the barn door. Mary, Mother of God, he said. Godfrey was not breathing his last rough breaths face down in the dirt with a hole in his head that was pouring an arc of blood like a hole in a tight wineskin. His hands were shaking. The fat one was slumped against the wall and looked like a sleepy child with his chin on his chest, except he was drenched in blood and the head set wrong because it was barely attached. His hand was off just below where the chain mail ended. It was nearby, still clutching the wicked hammer. His killer had put the sword exactly where he wanted it, and with great strength. Put her down, Thomas said. I will. The sword's pointing the sword's point poked Jacot's wooden hood and settled just behind his ear. He knew this man wielding it could drive through both hood and skull as easily as into a melon. Please don't kill me, Jacob said. I have to, or I can't sleep here. I'll leave. You'll come back and cut my throat at night out of love for Godfrey. He is your cousin. On my mother's side, and I don't even like my mother. Sorry, Jacob. You could leave. I'm too tired, and you would find me. No. Put her down so she doesn't get hurt. No. Do you really want your last earthly act to be trying to hide behind a girl you nearly raped? He put her down, and put his hands over his eyes. But while Thomas was trying to work up the will to strike, the girl stood in front of the smaller man. Don't kill him, she said. She looked up at Thomas, and he noticed how very light and gray her eyes were, like the flint in the walls of the barn, but luminous, like an overcast sky on the verge of turning blue. Thomas lowered his sword. The rain stopped. Don't kill anybody else again. Wow. What a chapter. And not bad time, too. What, we only got 20 minutes? 20 minutes as I said that? Look at that. How great. Interesting start. Very dark mood, which I was expecting from this book. But I think it's going to keep being good. Hopefully, we can read a chapter a day. Um, if it keeps going that fast, it'll be through this book in no time, which is great. But, well, I reckon that's it for me. Good night, folks. Sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow.